All-Star break is right around the corner. On Monday, we'll have the home run derby. We'll see Pete Alonso. The last 2 years, Pete Alonso is back-to-back champions. But really what we've seen so far with the Yankees and the Mets going into the second half of the season, the Yankees have been the hottest team in baseball. And there's really was nothing to say bad about the Yankees for the last 2 months, 3 months. They were as dominant as any team. They haven't lost a series until the last week and a half, 2 weeks. They've been absolutely dominant when you try to compare and contrast the old Yankee teams of the last 20 years and now. What worries me about the Yankees right now is the rotation has not been as good in the last 2 weeks. Cortez has taken a couple of steps back. Tejon has taken a couple of steps back. The guy that's really gotten better is Garrett Cole. And we expected that because he is the best pitcher on that team and on that roster. It's not even an argument. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball, one of the top 5 guys. And then you look at guys like Severino, hasn't really played well. Now, Herman could be back in the next couple of weeks. That could be an addition. Jordan Montgomery's been very good. As good as the other guys have been in spurts, if I were to start a pitcher as my second pitcher in a playoff spot, it would be Jordan Montgomery. I like Jordan Montgomery. He's pitched very well for the Yankees in the playoffs. I think he's been the best pitcher for the Yankees in the playoffs the last few years.
Since Tanaka left, he was always their best playoff pitcher, and now Montgomery's kind of taken over.
So we look at the Yankees right now. They need to add another outfield bat. It's been a huge problem for them. Joey Gallo has just been a bust. Now, they could move Joey Gallo back to Texas. There are rumors that Texas is interested in bringing him back. Maybe Texas just waits until the offseason and they just bring him back in free agency instead of giving up any of their prospects or whatever they're planning to do with him. But they need another bat in this lineup. Now, they added Tyler Wade. He's an ex-Yankee. He's a utility player that can play multiple positions in the infield. He's not something that just really sparks out there to say, oh, the Yankees, they've got something. They need to add another bat that really significantly stands out for this outfield, Speedy.
Yeah, I think the main targets were not necessarily these big bats necessarily, as much as it was a center fielder, too. A guy that could be a good defensive outfielder and more of a contact hitter like Benintendi is. Benintendi's hitting over 310 this year so far, but not thought of as a power guy. There are a couple other guys that the Yankees were interested in, too. Ramon Laureano, a guy from the Athletics, who they seem to be trading everybody, so I wouldn't be surprised at that. David Peralta's another name to look at from the Diamondbacks, as not a true pure center fielder, but he plays in a big park, so he's used to having that kind of range. So him adjusting to Yankee Stadium and the other AL East parks might not be a big issue. Because here's the thing, Aaron Judge has been playing a lot of center field this year, but he's also been a guy that's notoriously injury prone, and throughout the season, especially for how well he's playing, you want him to be well rested and manage him well for the playoffs too, with the year he's having, the MVP caliber year he's having. So I don't know if you're Aaron Boone, to play Aaron Judge in center field all the time. Now Aaron Hicks is hurt.
He's looked really good in the outfield.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying Aaron Judge is a bad center fielder. I'm just saying I don't know if you necessarily want to play him every game. So I think that's why the Yankees are definitely exploring these other options too, especially with all these teams that want to trade off, even if it's just for like a defensive specialist type center fielder, to give Aaron Judge a breather in playing center field and move him to right, or even move him to the DH spot and eliminate the DH. So there's a lot of options they could do now with the new rules. You don't have to just lose the DH now with the Shohei Ohtani rule they implemented at the start of the year, where originally would have had to lose the DH, and Aaron Judge would have to either come out of the game or be a DH as a pitching spot technically.
It's so interesting to see where Brian Cashman's going to go at the trade deadline. They might add another arm to this rotation. Who knows? Castillo's been a name that's been dangled out, not only with the Yankees, the Mets, and other teams. A guy that Cincinnati wants to part ways with. The Yankees do have a pretty decent farm system if they want to make a move for Luis Castillo, if they think they're going to lose Luis Severino in the offseason, which they quite possibly could. As far as the Mets have played up and down. They played well against the Braves. I mean, there are games that they haven't showed up in. Over the last couple of weeks, I think they've gotten more hitting in this lineup, but it still worries me with Francisco Lindor. He has not had a good season. A guy that everybody thought was going to take at least a better approach in the box hasn't done that this year. For a guy that's making $326 million for the next 10 years, you expect more from your star shortstop. As far as his defense, we know what his defense provides. Nimmo, I think, robbed. I thought he should have made the All-Star team. Very surprised that he didn't. He had a very good season in the center field. He hasn't been hitting the last couple of weeks, and that's the problem. That's probably why he didn't make the All-Star team, but he's had a great year. Pete Alonso, obviously, we know what he is and what he brings to the table. He hasn't hit as many home runs as he did in the beginning of the season.
He was in a bit of a slump recently.
But maybe the home run derby will wake him up. I don't know. But I think that the Mets need to add another bat to this lineup. Everybody keeps saying pitching, maybe bullpen help, because now Jacob deGrom and Scherzer will be back in the second half. But I think it's more of the bullpen that needs to be fixed a little bit. They need another power bat in the middle of this lineup to protect Pete Alonso because Francisco Lindor hasn't done it. None of these guys really stand out as power bats that can protect him where he's going to see pitches that he can hit.
The weakness of the Mets lineup has definitely been power this year. They're 20th in baseball in home runs right now, but they're doing well in other things. They're 5th in the league in on-base percentage. They're 7th, I think, in OPS, and they're the second best or the best situational hitting team in the National League in a lot of categories. So the power is the only thing they're really down for, but I think it's just a different approach that we've seen with Eric Chavez, now Buck Showalter, because the problem is that Mets had years where they were 2nd or 3rd in the National League in home runs, and they didn't get anywhere because they couldn't do other things, and they struck out a ton. So they're having a little bit of an opposite approach, but that doesn't mean they're not necessarily capable. Francisco Lindor, even though hitting .244, still has 16 home runs. So he's on pace for a 30, which for a shortstop, that's a very good mark. Somebody like Eduardo Escobar on pace for 20, 25 home runs.
Do you want your shortstop to hit 30 home runs and bat .236?
Here's the thing, though. I think there's other guys that are hitting for batting average that could be able to compensate for that. Starling Marte, .293. Jeff McNeil, obviously a big batting average guy, .310. So they have the other guys. Lindor's still driving in runs. He's still hitting the clutch well and stealing bases when he does get on base. He just has to get on base more. .318 on base percentage is more of what I would want him to improve most because of his speed and being able to get in a scoring position. Buck Showalter's not a guy that likes to steal bases as it is, but it's definitely a weapon to have for the postseason, crunch time games down the stretch. That could be a secret weapon for them. As far as the trade deadline, I still would favor the pitching in terms if I were the Mets. Obviously, you want to be able to do a lot of different things, but there's a bunch of bullpen arms. Or
you
even
need
guys,
a bat in this lineup, man.
Maybe a catcher,
Desperately.
maybe a catcher type, but
They have a catcher that they're going to be calling up.
Alvarez, yeah. They might not want to rush him up either. So they're going to judge that accordingly and feel like if he's ready or not. He's the second best prospect in the MLB pipeline as of a week ago. Tigers' Riley Green just got called up, was number 1. So he's technically the number 1 in the minor leagues still. But still, that would be the only thing. I just don't know if the catching market really has a lot out there. I know on Sports Lab Mouse, we've heard people mention Contreras, but I don't know how that could be very pricey for a guy that's young still and is offensively talented as he is. Bullpen help is definitely something, and I also think some veteran pitchers that could be fringe starters and pitch out of different roles. I mentioned Wade Miley as a guy on the Sports Lab Mouse, a lefty guy that has good playoff experience for them. Also a guy like Andrew Chafin, who pitches for Detroit right now, Daniel Bard for the Rockies, guys that are relief pitchers that could pitch at other roles too, are guys that I'm more interested in just to build up the depth, because the Mets have some stars in their bullpen, but they don't have a lot of depth, and especially lefties too. They really need that badly. That's going to be a significant flaw for their bullpen in the postseason if they can't get any lefties.